Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Paris Schutz. Brandis Friedman is on assignment. On the show tonight.
Times are tough, but I want you to know that help is on the way.
A look at President-elect Joe Biden's nominees to lead his economic team, including Janet Yellen, who would become the first woman to lead the Treasury Department.
I am asking for Speaker Madigan's resignation today.
Illinois Republican Minority Leader Jim Durkin calls for Michael Madigan to step aside as more Democratic House members turn against the Speaker.
I haven't received mail in a month, and before that it was sporadic at best.
Residents across Chicago are not getting regular mail service this holiday season. Hear what officials are planning to do about it. And the National Weather Service is looking for ice spotters. What are they and how they can take a crack at helping local rivers? But first, some of today's top stories. A grim COVID milestone in Illinois. State public health officials report 238 COVID-related deaths in the last 24 hours. That's the largest daily death toll since the pandemic began. The state also saw more than 9,700 new cases. That makes for a total case count right now surpassing 748,000. The statewide death toll is at 12,639 people. The 7-day testing positivity rate has ticked up a notch to 12.5%. But Governor Pritzker says there is good news on the horizon. The first batch of 100,000 doses of the vaccine should arrive for distribution in Illinois later this month.
Those vaccines, because of the limited numbers of them, will go almost all to healthcare workers, and if there are enough, then next to those in long-term care facilities, the staff and the residents.
A Chicago casino should be in or near the downtown area, so say 11 respondents to a request for information from bidders who want to operate a city-owned casino. They also agree on community engagement for the project, and all but one agree on the need for a hotel to go along with the casino and other amenities. The 11 respondents are Chicago Neighborhood Initiatives, Christensen Capital Advisors, DMA, DL3 Realty, Hard Rock International, JDL, MGM Resorts International, R2 Companies, Rush Street Gaming, Related Midwest, and Wynn Resorts. And there's much more on this story on our website, WTTW.com/news. Chicago is still failing to make the grade when it comes to recycling. A new report from Chicago's Inspector General says the city isn't doing enough to ensure that residents of large apartment complexes and businesses keep recyclable materials out of landfills. The report states that the Department of Streets and Sanitation lacks the ability to ticket or fine residents who fail to comply with the law. And there's also more on this story on our website, including Chicago's recycling rate compared to New York City and LA. Holiday shopping season is upon us, and a record amount of people are expected to conduct their business online due to the pandemic. That means an already stretched U.S. Postal Service will be tested even further. Service has been sporadic at best in many parts of Chicago, with some residents telling us they haven't received mail in a month. We visited two areas that have been hit hard to find out what's going on and what can be done to fix about it. This is a common sight at the McGee Post Office on 46th and Cottage Grove Avenue. Customers lined up, waiting to send or receive mail. Inside, they're packed in without much ability to socially distance.
People are leaving because they're not getting service, and it's taking too long.
Many customers say they're only here because their mail is not regularly being delivered.
Then you come in here and you get frustrated because you don't want to be in here because, first of all, COVID, lines out the door, people getting impatient.
Third Ward Alderman Pat Dowell says constituents in Bronzeville, Kenwood, and Oakland served by this branch have lost their patience with the post office in general.
People complain about not getting their mail, not receiving their packages, mail coming late, being delivered to the wrong address. This has been going on for a while.
It's a similar scene at the Rogers Park branch on Devon Avenue. Customers waiting in line in a tight space during a pandemic. Edgewater resident Pauline Scott says she hasn't received mail delivery in a month.
The last time I got mail was November 3rd. It is now December 1st.
Scott says packages have been lost and she doesn't know the status of some essential items she's waiting on.
We're waiting for license plates. We're waiting for a city sticker. I'm waiting for new insurance cards, and these are things that we take for granted every day that they're going to come in the mail.
Northside Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky says the problem has hit crisis level in Edgewater, Andersonville, and Rogers Park, and says she's had a hard time getting answers from USPS officials.
They tell us that it's about COVID, that there are many of the letter carriers who now are either quarantined or they're actually sick right now, down like 40%. But what doesn't make sense to me is why it is so concentrated here.
It doesn't make sense to 40th Ward Alderman Andre Vasquez either, who says it particularly hurts the elderly and low-income residents of his ward.
People get their medicine, they get paychecks, they get bills that they've got to pay, or else services get shut off. All of those things end up being affected.
Scott's father, who is also her next-door neighbor, is a cancer survivor who has had a tracheotomy. She says he can no longer depend on the mail to receive critical medication. We asked the USPS for an interview with the local postmaster, Wanda Prater, but they declined our request. They did say that they would look into the validity of any claims made about these specific post offices, and they say they are, quote, flexing their available resources to meet higher demand brought about because of COVID-19. Chicago Letter Carriers Union President Mac Julian says the problem simply boils down to a matter of staffing, and the problems are rampant throughout the city.
It's not just that area on Cottage Grove. It's not just Rogers Park. It's Auburn Park. It's Mount Greenwood. It's Ravenswood. It is the Dunning area. There's quite a few throughout Chicago.
This summer, U.S. Postmaster General Louis DeJoy came under heavy scrutiny because of cuts to overtime and the removal of hundreds of sorting machines. But Julian says the issues in Chicago predate DeJoy's tenure and COVID.
COVID really exposed how bad this problem is. And trust me when I say we're not far off from good service. So we're working with the Chicago Post Office. We're hoping that we can resolve this and hoping that they will listen.
On Monday, Congresswoman Schakowsky told us the post office assured it would hire 8 additional employees at that Rogers Park station to mitigate the service delays. Julian says there are more routes than carriers right now, and he's working with the post office to solve that. And coming up, how the president-elect hopes to get the economy back on track. But first, we take a look at the weather. President-elect Joe Biden has an important job ahead of him: revive the COVID-ravaged economy. He unveiled his economic team yesterday. It includes former Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen, who would become the first woman to lead the Treasury Department if confirmed. But while Yellen is held in high regard by politicians on both sides of the aisle, some of Biden's other picks have been drawing fire. Here's a little of what Biden had to say about his team yesterday.
It includes groundbreaking Americans who come from different backgrounds, but who share my core vision for economic relief here in the United States of America. And from the most unequal economic and job crisis in modern history, we can build a new American economy that works for all Americans, not just some, all.
And joining us now to give us their take on Biden's picks are Edward Stewart, Professor Emeritus of Economics at Northeastern Illinois University, and Michael Miller, Associate Professor of Economics at DePaul University. Great to see you guys again. So let's get right into the names. Janet Yellen is Treasury Secretary, Neera Tanden to head OMB, and Cecilia Rouse to head Council of Economic Advisors. First, Ed Stewart, a primer. What are the job functions of each of these positions?
The Treasury Secretary really is the chief financial officer of the United States. Their responsibility is the control of the currency. One of the key positions that Janet Yellen will occupy is the head of something called the Financial Stability Oversight Committee. That is a kind of an umbrella group of all financial regulations of banks, insurance companies, brokerage firms. And so her job is to make sure that the financial architecture or infrastructure, if you will, of the U.S. economy is functioning.
And Mike Miller, what about OMB, Neera Tanden, and Council of Economic Advisors, Cecilia Rouse? What do these jobs do?
Well, I know the Council of Economic Advisors would give the advice to the president on tax policy, trade policy, just anything you would say in terms of an economic policy other than monetary, which is done by the Fed instead of the government itself. And the OMB, over exact management and budget, it looks at the budget, it gives information and advice and manages the budget of the federal government.
And most onlookers anticipate a sharp turn from the Trump administration's economic policies. Here's what Janet Yellen said yesterday.
The pandemic and economic fallout that together have caused so much damage for so many and have had a disproportionate impact on the most vulnerable among us. So many people struggling to put food on the table and pay bills and rent. It's an American tragedy, and it's essential that we move with urgency.
So, Ed Stewart, what kind of policies will Janet Yellen pursue to promote an equitable recovery here?
Well, another thing, in fact, maybe in some ways the most important thing that Treasury does is it oversees tax and spending levels. The Treasury is the agency that handles the Internal Revenue Service. So, unlike the Trump administration, which cut taxes for the richest 1% and the top corporations, I think we're going to see tax policy refocus towards more breaks for middle and lower income individuals and maybe higher taxes for the super wealthy and top corporations, and also trying to target a little bit more specifically to working class and small businesses whatever stimulus package comes out of the new Congress. Because after all, as everybody who gets a tax refund or one of the $1,200 deposits, that all comes through the Treasury, and that's the responsibility of new Secretary Yellen.
And a lot is going to depend on the makeup of the Senate, given these two runoff elections. Mike Miller, do you expect a Yellen policy to significantly grow the economy?
Well, see, that's the big difference of moving from the Trump administration to the Biden. I think the Trump administration was focusing on, if I could use that trite expression, about baking a bigger pie. And the Biden administration is much more concerned with the distribution of the existing pie. I think that there's no doubt that Yellen is correct. We do need to provide some relief to Americans who were hurt by the pandemic. But we want to think of this in a little more long run, even the 4 years of the Biden administration. We need to focus upon productivity and entrepreneurship. We need to focus upon growth, because that's the way that we generate the money that can be used for the social safety net.
And speaking of relief, there is a bipartisan proposal right now of just under $1 trillion. Doesn't seem like Senator Mitch McConnell supports this yet. Ed Stewart, is this enough to stem future economic fallout due to rising COVID?
It's not enough. I think the number I saw was somewhere around $900 billion. But one of the Democratic senators, I think Sherwood Brown from Ohio, described it as a bridge.
You're talking about Sherrod Brown?
Sherrod Brown, yes, between this Congress and the incoming Congress and the incoming Biden administration. So what we may see is some a kind of stopgap stimulus too, somewhere between, I think Mitch McConnell is talking about $500 billion and the Senate bipartisan Senate group is talking about $900 billion. So something in there, get that done, because this is getting to late December, and a lot of these CARES Act supplemental income policies are set to expire at the end of the year. And one more thing, the last 2 weeks, we've had increasing claims for unemployment insurance, which I think is going to show up this Friday. We have the new unemployment data released by the Labor Department, and my prediction is that the unemployment rate for November will have gone up. So the need for a stimulus, new stimulus package, is getting more and more urgent.
So there are signs the recovery is slowing, and Fed Chair Jerome Powell has said you can't go, you're going to err more going too small than going too big.
Exactly.
Mike Miller, is there a risk that not only is this recovery slowing, it could plateau and turn around?
Well, it could certainly do that, depending upon the fear of the people, whether or not they want to go out and shop. And I'm hoping that the vaccine will turn much of that around. But we got to remember, I've seen estimates from the Committee for a Responsible Federal Government Budget, and it's a bipartisan group. And they calculate something called the multiplier, which is for every $1 spent, how much does GDP actually go up? And almost none of the programs that we have here are actually going to be stimulus. They're going to be relief. Definitely people need money to pay the rent and have the food. And I support the government doing that, but not in any way that's going to somehow stimulate GDP. The multipliers are way too small for that to be the case. So this is a pure case of income redistribution, which is necessary in such a situation as we have now. But the key to economic growth is not the government spending. It's entrepreneurship and investing in technology that will raise productivity.
Well, it seems to be consensus among you two that more needs to be done. We'll have to leave it there. My thanks to Ed Stewart and Mike Miller.
My pleasure, Paris.
You got it.
Today might have been an unseasonably warm day, but soon enough, snow and ice will blanket everything, including rivers, so much so that ice jams could develop. But the National Weather Service hopes ice spotters can help with early detection. WTTW News reporter Patty Wetley joins us now with more. Patty, great to see you. So what exactly is an ice spotter and how is it going to help the National Weather Service here?
Yeah, an ice spotter can be anybody like you and me. The only qualifications are if you live close to one of the area's rivers and you have time every Monday between now and the end of March to go out in the morning and take a look at that river.
And ice jams, beyond being a movie Michael Jordan, I think, made, are problematic. Why?
That's Space Jam.
Oh, sorry.
They're problematic because river gauges can't necessarily tell that they're there. So the ice jam could be here, the river gauge could be here, and it's not noticing the fluctuation in level, and you can have very isolated, localized flooding where that ice jam is. And because the National Weather Service doesn't have a gazillion employees to be monitoring every point along every river, they ask for these volunteer ice spotters to check in with them and let them know about ice conditions on these rivers.
Another instance of having citizen scientists go out and do some important work. All right, Patty, thank you so much.
Thanks, Paris.
And you can read Patty's full story on our website, where you'll find details on how to sign up as a volunteer. It's all at WTTW.com/news. And we're back in a minute with Spotlight Politics, so please stick around.
We can get past the idea of turning this into a political topic and really get to serving our communities. That's something I can get behind.
Maybe we can use this as a calling card to unite.
Hi. Okay, so I think we're having perhaps some difficulties technically, but I covered this morning. Oh, I think I hear Paris now. Oh, all right. So this morning I covered the arraignment of 4 individuals who really were the ringleaders of this alleged ComEd bribery scandal. I say alleged because the 4 individuals, that is former ComEd CEO Ann Primajori, also a former ComEd executive John Hooker, as well as Jay Doherty, who may be familiar to a lot of people as the former head of the City Club of Chicago, but then also, of course, Michael Madigan's longtime bestie and political confidant, Mike McLean. They all pleaded not guilty in a hearing that took place, not Zoom, but something like it, due, of course, to the coronavirus. But it's interesting because when I say the alleged scheme, ComEd, of course, this summer did admit to all of the facts of this scheme purportedly to curry favor with House Speaker Michael Madigan. And so they admitted to it, but these folks are saying not guilty. They say that it is overzealous prosecutors trying to go after Madigan and put pressure on them. So again, this was a Zoom hearing. There's going to be another hearing in February, but the prosecution talked about voluminous amount of evidence that they have acquired throughout really the 9 years that this bribery scheme allegedly was going on.
Heather Sharon, are you surprised at the not guilty pleadings?
Yeah, Heather.
So I was not surprised that all 4 of them, as Amanda said, pled not guilty. They have all maintained their innocence. But really what this does is signal that it could potentially be a long drawn out legal fight. So typically after an arraignment, discovery happens, and we learned today that there is a voluminous amount of discovery. And I know every reporter in Chicago and Illinois wants to see exactly what the feds have with this case. But this is just going to serve to turn up the heat on House Speaker Michael Madigan, who will face his caucus in a matter of weeks to see whether he keeps his position as House Speaker.
So yes, of course, Madigan has not been charged with wrongdoing. He hasn't spoken with reporters, and that is something that nor has he gone before this House Special Investigative Committee. He was invited. No surprise there that he said no to that invitation. Republicans really putting on the pressure on Democrats to say, hey, we have subpoena power. Why aren't we using it there? Really, point being, we haven't had the opportunity to ask Speaker Madigan any questions about this. He has put forth statements denying any wrongdoing, but we have now this trove of emails from ComEd that appear to show he was at least involved in some discussions with McLean involving ComEd. Whether that meets the standard of anything illegal, of course, is left for prosecutors, but it certainly has people raising their eyebrows, and even more has some of the House Democrats continuing to defect for the first time. Kathleen Willis of Addison, a Democrat, is a member of Madigan's leadership team. And so, Paris, are you back?
I think I've always been here, but now you're hearing me. All right, so let's, Amanda, you talked about the political fallout. You have Illinois GOP leader Jim Durkin saying it's time for Madigan to step aside. Let's take a look at what he said.
All roads in this massive and wide-ranging scandal lead to Speaker Madigan. So today, for the good of the state and the good for the people of Illinois, and also for the good of the House chamber, I am asking for Speaker Madigan's resignation today.
So Heather, he's a member of the other party, and he's even saying he thinks he'll have more votes for Speaker than Mike Madigan. I mean, does this move the needle at all?
I don't think it does. The question remains, if Michael Madigan doesn't have 60 votes on the Democratic caucus, and he does not appear to have 60 votes at this point, if not Madigan, then who is the fundamental question? And if Jim Durkin thinks that 15 Democrats are going to cross the aisle and vote for him for Speaker, I would like to see that.
You know, I've got to wait because this sort of became a thing during, Durkin was asked about it during a press conference. Every year, this is how it works. The reason that you have a minority leader is because you have 2 members of each party running for speaker. The majority party is the one that gets the speakership. The one who is the runner-up is the head of the minority party. So in this regard, I think it is much ado about nothing. Durkin, it would be, my guess is under no, he does not believe that he is going to be the speaker. But it is sort of an interesting play just to see, as Heather noted, who is going to get that job. It is going to be a Democrat. The question is who. And again, getting back to our earlier point, it appears as if that we could see a further defections, even if they're not coming out in public. So now 19 House Democrats have come out to say that they will not vote for Madigan for another term as speaker.
So we have defections, but we don't have a coalition of support behind one candidate. Amanda, I mean, Representative Stephanie Kiefowit was the first to come out and say, I'm a candidate. Will that be the candidate or will someone else emerge?
You know, I would expect that we are going to have a whole lot of people that are going to want that job. They just, again, are not going public with it. These are discussions that are happening amongst Democrats. They are discussions that very well could happen when Democrats are back together again. It may well be that somebody who thus far is sticking by Madigan ends up being the one that rises to take his title. I guess I will say that while Madigan continues to fight for it, he's hoping that this this infighting amongst House Democrats is going to lead them back to him. I would be surprised, because once you have these 19 that have come out and said they're not going to do it, it is very difficult, near impossible for them
Heather,
to then turn around and vote for Madigan. You need 60 votes.
One of the allures right now of being Speaker, we only have a few seconds left, is to draw the next map. Will Madigan still draw the next map?
Well, this is the fundamental question. If he's not Speaker, he will be just one of many Democrats in the House. So he will not be able to exercise that iron grip as he's had in years past, which means it will be a whole new ballgame, and 2021 probably to be just as crazy as 2020.
Wow, well, that's a hell of a prognostication. All right, Heather and Amanda, thank you both very much.
Thanks, Paris.
And that is our show for this Wednesday night, abbreviated to bring you Jeffrey Bayer's Chicago from the Air. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing. And you can get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. And you can also get the show via podcast and the PBS video app. And please join us tomorrow night, live at 7. We head to Chatham to see how residents are dealing with COVID's second wave, and we visit a new health center. Plus, Grammy-winning jazz vocalist Kurt Elling joins us for a one-on-one. And now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe. Good night.
Closed captioning for this program is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, pleased to give back to the community through numerous charitable initiatives.